What do fast-growing brands have in common? Well, that's what we're going to explore in today's episode.
Welcome to Fordify Live with your host, Ford Saeks.
Today on Fordify Live, we're joined by Nick Powills. He's the founder of No Limit Agency and the publisher of 1851 Franchise. Now, Nick's been helping brands grow and tell their stories for years. Now, in this episode, we're going to dive deep into his experience with this and all the different things that he's doing. First of all, Nick, thank you so much for carving time out of your busy schedule to join me on Fordify Live.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
All right. Well, in the green room, we talked a little bit, and I wanted to ask you this question. I know you've worked with so many brands over the years. Do you remember the first time you realized that you had a knack for helping businesses tell their story, and what sparked your passion for branding and franchising?
Well, the story is fascinating. I'm going to give the short version. I never thought I would be in franchising. And so when I do my podcast, question one is always, how did you accidentally fall into franchising? Because I think 99% of people accidentally fall into this thing. The short version is I went from internship at Rolling Stone, where I was told to keep my mouth shut, and I didn't. And I pitched a story on the family tree of the Beach Boys. Found myself on the road with Paul Simon and Brian Wilson for a summer. Left New York, started a music magazine in Chicago. And working at a daily newspaper in Chicago, rock star journalist, hoop earrings, red Mustang, leather jacket. Cool. And I figured I wanted to make a run out of the music magazine. The challenge is there's no money in music, which I later figured that out. So I took a job at a franchise PR agency, having no idea what franchising was, figured it was McDonald's, and frankly didn't really care what it was. I just wanted to learn more about business. It was a form of marketing. Let's figure this thing out. Very, very early on, I had the pleasure of working with a Batteries Plus franchisee. It's now called Batteries Plus Bulbs. He was out of LA. I knew nothing what PR was. I was a journalist. I hated PR people. Really, really, really hated the publicist. And I talked to this guy and I was like, why in the world would he buy a battery business? That seems dumb. Now, the truth is the reason you buy a battery business is because of the commercial sales that you're able to build off of that, hospitals, et cetera. But what was fascinating to me was he was an engineer who wanted to build his own battery powered bike. And so he had this passion, aligned business with passion. And so I ended up booking this segment on CBS in LA where the host came out and rode the electric bike, and it was really cool. And I did another franchisee fairly soon after that, Little Gin, where this guy just poured his heart out and invested his life savings, and he's worried about it. He's got to get customers. And there was this aha moment that franchisees are much like rock stars, or rock stars are much like franchisees. They've all had to overcome something, some sort of hurdle to get to this point where they jump off this ledge and make a run at it. And so the storytelling, when I started realizing that was part of the magic, I started realizing that brands don't sell brands, people do. Let's stop talking about franchise X and let's start talking about who the human is that took the risk. Those two things gave me, and early on, I probably didn't understand the magic that I was building, but it gave me a perspective on telling stories, and probably goes all the way back to traveling with Paul Simon and Brian Wilson. I wasn't talking about their music. I was talking about their stories and who they were as humans. And so when I realized that my gift or art is talking to people, that's where the magic of what has happened beyond this has occurred. So I don't look at brands, I do, but I try to unpack who are the people behind these things. And in franchising, what's beautiful is it's full of people that invested their life savings into a business they have little to no control over. And so it's a beautiful thing.
Can't cut through the online chaos? This episode is powered by Ignite Visibility, the nation's expert in ROI-driven digital marketing. We help over 90 leading franchise brands in 2,500 locations outrank competitors and convert more customers. Ready to stand out and grow? Claim your free digital marketing audit at ignitevisibility.com. Ignite your growth.
Yeah, for me, I was an entrepreneur for years, started a bunch of businesses, and then I was first introduced to franchising when I was asked to keynote at IFA. And I mean, I knew what a franchise was kind of, I mean, I knew it was a business and you had to buy it and follow the system, but I didn't really understand the depth of it. And I got lucky and was one of the keynote presenters and of course did all my background. This is, 25, 30 years ago. And I looked at everything and I thought, oh, wow, this is amazing. Since that time, I've been an investor as a franchisor and certainly as a franchisee in a couple businesses. So I learned the back end of it from both sides. And of course, now, I speak at a lot of the groups and it's been really amazing. But what's interesting, like you said, is you can take somebody who maybe doesn't have business experience, but just has a passion. And sometimes they're a practitioner. Sometimes they're an investor or they're at a different chapter of their life. But franchising supports so many different roles, but it gives them a blueprint for success. And the franchisor just wants the franchisees to follow the system. And the franchisee's like, hey, why aren't you doing more to drive business, right? And so, where I come in is I kind of bridge that gap and give them some ideas in doing that. But along the way, the old saying, success leaves clues. And I think that what makes franchising so successful, and I know we've got listeners, we're live right now on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube and a few other places. And the audio from this becomes the Business Growth Show podcast. So if you turned in late, we're talking to Nick Powills. He does lots of different things. You can find him at 1851franchise.com. And what's the FranCamp website? What's that website?
Right now it is 1851francamp.com.
Okay, 1851francamp.com. Check that out later, guys. It'll be in the show notes. All right. So I got my experience in that. And over the years now and decades in franchising and certainly doing a lot of work, I guess I would say the more I know I don't know because it's changing so quickly. And lately in the last couple of years now with AI and, the impact, I just want to circle back to the point you made about the human. I think that going forward, that human story and that human element is going to be so important. So when someone says what's important for growing a business, especially a franchise, I think that human connection, that's why franchising works, is because they're in their local communities. But I'd love to hear your take on more about that storytelling and the branding and what really sets the successful ones apart from the ones that fail.
So all franchises, there's a founder involved. And typically the founder has a story, a backstory, some sort of backdrop on why they created this business. And then they figure out a way to operationalize it. And when it's operationalized well, then it could scale and duplicate, which is where the franchise gets created. So majority of franchise brands are founder built. Now, in today's private equity world or portfolio company world, there's plenty of concepts that are being built out of leaders, not necessarily founders, which we could probably go down a rabbit hole on that. I'll tell you what I'm thinking a lot about recently. I did a podcast today with a franchisee. They were looking at home service sector. They ended up buying into children's education, much different investment. They're talking millions versus hundreds of thousands. And I said to them, they were young folks. I said, it's rare for young folks to get into this segment because it requires too much capital. And they're one of their dads is involved in franchising. So I'm sure helped on the funding side. But I'm fascinated on how much we've gotten away from the hustle and grit. And so when the investment goes high or the franchise fee goes high, you're removing the possibility of finding someone that has hustle and grit. I started our business with about $10,000 in the bank. That means all the equity that I had to build and capital that I had to put into it was built on that hustle and grit. And the beauty of franchising, the best brands are the ones that were built on that. And so in today's world, we're almost removing that because the fees are getting out of control or real estate's getting out of control. And so what builds a great business in today's world, it ends up, because that's been eliminated, it ends up being, is it well capitalized? And are the operations strong and are the expectations aligned with the outcomes? And so it's not overly challenging to build great businesses in franchising today, but very few have those pieces, which is where I would say maybe a percentage point of brands will ever make it over 100 units. And that's the gap between the good and the bad. So it all comes down to, in today's world is capital, in yesterday's world it was hustle and grit. similar to what's happening in AI, I hope it swings back to the middle at some point, and we find a way to empower those that are going to put the work in to make the business great. Those are going to be the ones that get lifted up to the top again.
Yeah, I wrote a book called Accelerate for Local Marketing, and I always tell people, all the marketing in the world won't overcome a bad customer experience. And, that human touch, for those of you listening, if you're going to start and look at one thing, I would look at your customer journey, mystery shop yourself, and are you really connected? So often, and I've seen this happen in franchise brands that have grown, you look at some of the successful, they started as a single unit owner, then they may become a multi-unit owner, and then maybe they become a multi-brand owner. There's a lot of those too, right? That own multiple franchise brands. And I see this disconnect. Sometimes they grow and they think they're going to diversify, but I think they de-worsify, right? I think they lose their strength. I know for me, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and I'm really good at the idea phase, the visionary stage, the hustle and grit. But that leadership, the systems, I was just on a podcast with another guy, Taylor from Speaker Flow. We were doing an episode about systems, and he used to have a bunch of employees, and he's got it all down to systems. And he's an engineer, programmer, like he's a systems guy. But anyway, he runs his business now with thousands of customers with 3 employees, and it's all system driven. And, that makes me think of the franchise brand being system driven, but you still need to have that personal touch to make sure you're creating a culture of communication. And the brands that I've seen that do that have really good open communications. And the ones that I've seen failed. And I had a guy, I won't mention his name. He was on my show, and, my team finds the guests, and we interview a lot of the CEOs from franchise brands because it builds a relationship, and then they might have me speak at their conference. Full disclosure, those people know it. Charles Watson from Tropical Smoothie was on my show, then he booked me for a keynote. So, you build those relationships, you add the value. And going back to Charles, one of the things that was really interesting about him is he really took care of his franchise. When I went to his conference, he started the morning. I was going to go on at like 9:30. He got in there at 8 o'clock. He pulled his chair up on stage while everybody was coming in the room, and he grabbed a microphone and he just started answering questions. And people were like, "Are we going to add salads? Are we going to add gluten-free?" And it was the first time I'd seen a CEO just ask him anything you want. And there were some people, you could tell, the franchisees that were trying to had their own agenda, that they were trying to push something through. But he really did a great job at connecting with him. And all through the conference, you could just tell the franchisees that support the brand, as opposed to that other guest I had who was just literally, he said this on the show too. He's like, "Well, I'm just trying to get to 100 units so I can flip it and exit to a private." As soon as he said it, I was just like, I don't know if I even want to air this episode, because I don't support that. Like, I don't want to just pump and dump, like just get it up to a certain number. And so he's not evaluating the franchisees. He's looking for anybody that has the money. And I know it's going to fail. Like, I know there's no way it can fail. It can win. And then I've had people that have, 35, 40 units, and they've had it for 20 years. They're not interested in getting over 100, but they really take care of their people. Now, you've got a lot of experience. You work with a lot of your own brands. You do your own events. You have your own masterminds. What are some of the common things that you've seen that work, and what do you think are the biggest pitfalls, the mistakes that they make that they wouldn't have to make if they knew?
All right. Well, when you're talking the story about Tropical Smoothie, that's an example of a brand. I had one of their franchisees on podcast during COVID, who he said I shouldn't have even been approved, but I had the grit and hustle, and I got in with 1 unit, and now he's I think their largest franchisee. That's a brand where they didn't sell franchises, they developed franchisees. Oftentimes, franchisors get lost in selling. They talk about how much their cost per deal, or how much should it cost for them to close a franchisee, and they don't look at the value of a deal. And so if you look at the value of a deal, I like taking 3 years royalty. And so on $1 million at 5%, that's $150,000. I say, Ford, I'll write you a check for 150. What would you give me? You might say, I'll give you 145,000. If I said, what do franchisors budget for franchise sales? It's like $15,000. So it's like they want to spend 15 and get 150 back in 3 years. And so at the front end, all these brands are selling franchisees. Tropical Smoothie developed franchisees, and that's part of their success. I was at at a franchisor conference. They are no longer a client. CEO got on stage. It's a multi-brand portfolio company of home service brands. She goes, "We're on a mission to be $1 billion company." I'm sitting at a table. I was her keynote. I'm sitting at a table with franchisees. I have to go now after this bonehead CEO is talking, and she says this, and the franchisee goes to me. He goes, I'm just trying to feed my family. I can't even make any money." And so she's saying $1 billion to a system where the average unit volume's $100,000. And so to these trucks in a truck, man in the vans, they're sitting here like, who is this person? And so the disconnect, that's the person that gets on your podcast and says, I'm going to grow this to 100 and I'm going to sell it. And now over here, you hear this new term, responsible franchising, which is full of the S word. I won't swear on here.
You can say what you want. It's my show. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Bullshit.
Yeah.
Because they're all saying this. Now, if we look at the broker networks, the brokers are out there saying, "Hey, Ford, I coach you for free. The franchisor pays me." Great. Yes. The check leaves Ford's hand, goes to the franchisor, and goes right back to the broker for the cost of the deal. And the broker is out here misguiding the franchisees. And so you have all these things, all these brands that are selling franchises, not developing franchisees, not looking at the value of the deal, not understand that royalties are what's going to build their business. And now on the other side, like that behavior would have been dismissed years ago. And now private equity is like, oh, I'll buy that brand that just scaled to 100 units because they see all the gaps that founder or owner didn't know how to sell. And so all this to say, like the difference between good and great, and you can still be good at 100 units, but you did so on the backs of people that risked their life savings and probably won't create significant wealth for their family. They might replace their income. They might replace a job, but they're not going to be scaling. And then you have the tropical smoothies of the world that were like, let's develop franchisees. Let's teach you how to go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. Now, when you have this dip in sales, let's teach you what it feels like to have that J curve. So when you get to the other side of this, you've built up a portfolio that eventually you're going to exit at a 3.5 times multiple and have built wealth for your family. Those brands, like if we use the math, out of 4,000 brands, if that's the true number that exists, I guess 250 of those develop franchisees, the rest of them sell. And so that's my concern with franchising, period, is what is your intention when you go into this? And if you go back to being that founder that went through the journey of doing this, if you truly care about people, I promise you that's going to build tremendous wealth for you, greater wealth that will let you sleep at night, that when this short life is over, you can reflect backwards and see it all the human beings that you impacted positively and change your lives.
Well, that is some really sage advice. I hope that, if you're a franchisor, you're listening to this and you're trying to take a real hard look in the mirror and look at your systems and your people and ask yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, are you really more on the side of developing, business leaders and franchisees, or are you more focused on, the business side, making you look big, but not taking care of the people that you built it on the back? So I think that's amazing advice. And if you're a franchisee, just remember, you have to take personal accountability for your own success and make sure you're in a system that supports it. And I used to think, it's kind of like when I was younger, you think all doctors are good and all police are good. And then you realize someone's the worst doctor in the world, right? Someone's the worst franchise. And now with the different prices, I mean, there's, like you said, 4,000, I've heard numbers anywhere from 3,000 to 6,000, different brands. And of course, there's a difference between licensing and franchising and all the different things that are happening in franchising now. All right. So let's go a little different route. What do you think is really exciting going forward that franchisees can take advantage of to grow?
Well, if we just look at, we'll start at the candidate journey. You go backwards. I think like every time I go backwards, I'm like, back in 2008, I'm like stuck in 2008. But the franchise portals were the primary source of finding information online about how to franchise or buy a franchise. So you had portals and you had franchise shows like expos. Today, you have a wealth of information And you have tools like AI that if you plug in all of your situation, you could plug in your LinkedIn profile, you could plug in your financials, you could plug in your passions, like the tools that are at our fingertips to help us find the answers to what would best fit us are better than ever before. And so what I'm excited about is that the resources are there, which means it's going to, in my opinion, eventually it's going to disrupt the need for the broker in that sense. The franchisees are given so many tools and resources to decide how do I actually go about doing this and what is the right brand for me. That excites me the most. Access to capital is also, I think, important today because, again, like the grit and hustle is deteriorating. There's going to be fewer people that can just jump in and be entrepreneurs. And so access to capital is going to be the next side of that. And so when private equity starts recognizing, like, let's invest or find ways to invest in the humans that are going to operate these businesses at the local level, like that's actually the magic or the heroes of these businesses. I think that transformation is also going to be very, very beneficial to the world of franchising.
So I want to go, those are two good points. I want to go back to the first point about finding the answers. You know, I'm actually presenting this afternoon, and then I'm presenting next week actually for the Canadian Franchise Association. I'm doing a thing on AI, and you know, and when I speak to franchises, some don't even know what AI is. They know it's a ChatGPT. They've heard of ChatGPT, and other people are like developing their own agents. And you know, ChatGPT just launched ChatGPT agents, which are now virtual employees that can go do. I mean, I'm looking at this thing as, I mean, I look at AI not from a technical standpoint. I don't care about the technology. I just care about, is it going to help me make better decisions? Is it going to help me run my business more effectively? Is it going to help me save time? And is it going to help me save time so I can spend more time building relationships? Because in my business, deals don't happen before dialogue. I have to be speaking to people. They're not going to hire a keynote speaker at my fee if they haven't seen me speak or seen something related to what I do, right? And so with this new agents, I used to think, custom GPTs were really cool because I called those an agent where you could, you know, take everything about your brand and build this agent. Like I have a Fordify agent, so I was able to put your name, you know, Nick Powills, and here's my next guest. And it wrote the show opening, although we had to work on that a little bit, but it wrote the show opening, you know, your introduction and about 10 questions related to your background to kind of get the conversation started. And that's an agent, or that was a custom GPT. But now with agents, I can just say, I'm going to Denver in 2 weeks, find me this, this, and this, and it runs on its own virtual machine. And so the only reason I'm bringing that up in this episode is I think it's going to, if that's what's launching right now, and I've played around with it a little bit, and I got the Teams version for $25 a month. I'm just, the seismic shift that's coming with virtual employees and AI agents, I think is going to transform the whole buying experience. And the reason I brought that up, and I'll get to my question, it's like a long road to a tiny house here. But people don't, the traditional sales funnel doesn't work. Like I have an agency, you have an agency. My agency, I don't sell to franchises. I don't have any franchise clients. Mine are more speakers, authors, trainers, and experts have come to me. We build their brand, right? And local companies in my area. But I don't go after any franchising because as soon as I do, they're not going to hire me as a keynote because they're going to think I'm trying to solicit and I'm not. I'm strictly there as a keynote speaker, as a Hall of Fame keynote speaker. So these agents are going to disrupt the whole buying process because no longer are you going to be spending your time to go research all these different things. And so what I was getting at is the traditional sales funnel is dead. You used to have a sales funnel, you drive traffic to a landing page, you control the conversation and they buy. But now the way people are buying, they're searching, they're using AI. I mean, I bought an e-bike. I used to be a professional cyclist and I wanted to get an e-bike so I could still keep up with these 30-year-olds. And I used AI to go research the pros and cons, the goods and bad, the stories. And it wasn't just like going to Perplexity. I mean, it did some amazing research. So I know I'm getting to a point here is I think this is going to be the biggest shift since the internet. I think it's going to kill the internet in the traditional sense of how we use it. The search engines are dead. SEO is dead. The way people find I just think it's seismic is the word that comes to my mind.
Yeah, I think the thing that is going to get blockbustered the most is education. I think we need the fundamentals on how to interact with each other as humans. I think experiential is going to skyrocket because the access to information is so high. So if I want to go get my master's in business, I could use ChatGPT and agents to help coach me and get me through probably at an accelerated rate. That gives me all the information that I'm going to need, and then I can go put it into real world. So I think education is going to be disrupted. If I think about a disruptor of what the internet disrupted, first thing that comes to mind is like the travel agents. You and I are travel agents today.
Yeah.
And so the travel agents that bought into that and said, I'm going to go build content around this. I'm going to be an expert resource for this. I'm going to still humanize the tools that exist, are the ones that continue to build up. And you look at the foundation of the Expedias of the world. Expedia was just a travel agency that figured out a way to manipulate the internet to be able to give the tool. So I think business is always going to be there. It's how to use these tools to progress it. I use the term often blockbustered because it's a great example. Netflix comes to them and says, buy us. They say, get out of here. You're just a fly, and they're gone. It's a business that should still be dominating production of film and everything else, and it's dead. Well, in this sense, like we can see the shift is happening in real time. And so I think some people are going way to one direction, like writers that are like, ooh, I don't have to write anymore. I'll just plug it into ChatGPT and have it write the article. Great. That was a great starting point. But if you didn't do the interview, if you didn't add in color into this, then that content, the authority of it is going to diminish. I agree with you that I think the internet and the way that we know it, Google of the world, is going to diminish, and the Chat GPT or AI models of helping me educate myself are going to go up. Last thing I'll say is on these candidates, you're right. We interview franchisees after they've bought a franchise, and one of the questions that we asked them, because I wanted to have the data more so that I could help influence the marketing funnel, was how much time does it take you to go from impression to inquiry? And it's held steady. Now we've done this for 4 years of taking all these franchises. There's thousands in there, and it hasn't moved an inch. It's 6.4 months. Now, a bigger investment takes longer. A lower investment can go earlier, but 6.4 months is the number that doesn't change at all. And so these franchisors get out there and say, I'm going to spend $1 million on Google ads this month. They're like, I got nothing. That agency sucks. Well, no, it built up the funnel. Watch what happens 6 months, 9 months, and a year from now. You actually have people that are going to now start to buy. And so now with all these tools combined, I'm hopeful that the value of marketing is going to go up. The importance of human stories is going to go up. Authentic content is going to go up. Like a franchisor website is not authentic content. It's positioning you to say, go fill out this form. Well, what's our franchisees saying? Can ChatGPT, if we plug it in and say, go find all the franchisees on social of this brand and give me the sentiment of this business, is that going to happen? Of course it is. And so now that comes all the way back to the first topic that we're talking about of developing franchisees versus selling. If you don't build a good business, there will be no more hiding. And so your validation, your lawsuits, poor item 19, upside down return on investments, all these things are going to bubble to the top because the buyer is going to be more educated with the tools that exist. And I'm excited for that. That's where some of the sales processes are going to get blockbustered in a positive way too.
Yeah, I think that's right in alignment with the sales funnel's dead, because the way people make their decision, they're influenced by search and AI and their sphere of influence. And so I'm sharing with people, the old content marketing method of, going to answer the public and looking at your keywords and creating short form videos and doing all that. I'm telling people, look, you got to look at this differently now. And how can you really create an authentic brand and real? I'm telling people that, to multi-purpose their content into video, into shorts, into podcasts, to get on podcasts, because the AI is going to look holistically at everything, right? It's going to look at the whole, like you just said. And that's a great example, because if I want to become a franchisee of any system, I can literally now have the agent go out there and do all that research and get the real sentiment. It reminds me of, I was speaking to a bunch of bankers at a bank association, and, they were all local independent banks with anywhere from, 1 to 35 locations. And I'm doing the keynote, and And I said, okay, why do people do business with you? Can I get a volunteer? And a guy comes on stage. His name is Chad. And I said, what kind of dog do you got? I'm just going to ask.
It's a golden doodle.
Mine's a golden doodle. Well, mine's a Labradoodle. It's over there. I was like, I heard your dog. So this is live, everybody.
Mine's so loud.
Hey, it's okay. It's live, everybody. It's no problem. It's all, I appreciate it. Anyway, so going back to Chad. So he's on stage. I said, why do people do business with you over your competition? The old Rosser Reeves, USP thing. Why do people do business with you over your competition? And he says, it's all about customer experience. It's all about customer service. And I said, great. So I grabbed my cell phone and I said, what's your bank's phone number? And I called the bank while I'm on stage, 600 people in the audience. And, I got my little lav microphone right here on my chest. So I'm on speakerphone and it's a terrible call. I get rerouted. It goes on hold. And the CEO is just livid with me. He's turning red. I mean, he's mad. And I just said to him, I said, look, I'm not trying to embarrass you in front of your peers, but wouldn't you want to know? You think that your competitive advantage is customer experience, but this is how you're taking care of your customers. I got rerouted. They never asked me my name. They got me off the phone with not even qualifying me or capturing any details. You completely lost a customer. And I told him, I said, it's the cost to reach your customers. It's your conversion rate. It's your cost on the first sale. And it's your long-term lifetime value. Like, you just lost all my referrals if I became a customer. You don't realize the impact of that personal experience, that touch point, that flare point of that. And so, we talked a little bit and we gave him, and turns out I ended up working with the guy for 9 years. We grew him to 30 branches. I stayed in his house, went fishing with him on fishing trips. Like, he became a really good friend, but boy, it sure started rough. I didn't know I was going to embarrass them, but I was just like, they could have answered the phone and done amazing. But I think that that's a real good lesson for everybody here, is to go back and really, check yourself. How well are you really doing? And right now, AI can do that. So if you have negative reviews, if you have a negative footprint, I mean, I had a bad experience with a franchise brand that does auto glass repair. It's a pretty big company. They quoted me $500. They came out for my Jeep Rubicon. It was $1,005 when they got done. I'm like, how did this happen? Well, we had to do some calibration on your safety features. And I said, look, you told me it was $500. Like, you didn't. And when you came on, you didn't, hey, Ford, you're going to have to pay more. You just charged me more. So I filled out a form to their company. No one called me back. I called their company and said, look, you should Google my name. I'm serious. I'm going to talk about this in my keynotes. I'm not trying to, blackmail them. I'm just trying to say, hey, you should probably take care of this. So I put a review on Google. And I don't like to do negative reviews because obviously, as a keynote speaker, I don't want another franchise brand to Google and then see I'm talking bad about a brand, because hell, that's a kiss of death, right? They're not gonna, bring me in to speak at their group. And so I wrote this negative review. And the local franchisee said, sorry, we let you down. Like, that's all that's the answer. So I wrote this really long review, and I thought to myself, I'd love to just tell him he should have just taken that review into ChatGPT and said, hey, how do I, let the customer know that this wasn't our intention? Just because people are going to see it. And for a while, I don't do this tactic anymore. It's really a dumb tactic, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So we had some clients that they had all 5-star reviews. And I said, I want you to have one of your clients leave a 1-star review, but leave it positive. So I want you to make a negative review, but say, if you're wondering why I have 1-star reviews, because I know you're going to read this review. Why are you paying attention to this one and not the other 165-star reviews? I wouldn't do that tactic. I wouldn't do it now, but I did do that for a while. And it was kind of fun. And people, because, I do that. I go to a company and I'm going to click at the lowest reviews because I don't want to see the good ones. I want to see, how does a company overcome their bad things? I guess all that's just to say the same thing that you're saying is, the franchisees and the businesses that grow are going to be the ones that take care of their customers and really look at that human experience. And I think that even more going forward, I had someone on my show. I'd have to go back and look at which episode it was. It was one of my recent ones. He's very big in the QSR, quick serve restaurants, thousands of units, slipping my brand, the brand slipping my brain. But he said they did studies where they had their kiosks. So you could go to their kiosks and order food. And so they did a couple stores where they ordered the kiosk with no one standing there. And then they had an employee within eyesight of the kiosk. So not standing at the kiosk, but just in visual sight. And their sales went up like 30% because the human felt more comfortable using the kiosk, even doing self-service, knowing there was a person there that they could ask a question to. And so that person, that's all their job was to do, was to just answer the question and increase the customer satisfaction. They bought more items, they tipped better. And so I just think that, you know, when we think about technology and changing our worlds, and it's changing all of our worlds, I just think that human experience, man, I don't think that people realize the impact that's coming.
No, I think it's going to become even more impactful. I think the separation between good and bad is going to just compound. Like, obviously, you tell stories. Everybody can think back to the bad ones. It's harder to think to the good ones. But I'll say, like, we landed did a family trip to Greece a few weeks ago. I booked a hotel by Newark Airport. Not great hotels, but because it had double beds, and I have 2 boys and my wife, and I was like, okay, this will work fine. We get there and they go, we're sold out of all double beds, so we have a king. I said, well, that's not going to work. Can you put 2 rollaways? And they said, no, we can put 1 in. I go, right, but there's 4 of us. We booked the room. And so the manager comes out. He goes, all right, we've got you another king room. They're not connected, but we got you another king room. I was like, all right, this is good. And I give them my card to check in, and they charge me double for that other room. They not only charge me for this one, they charge it.
Oh my goodness! So they didn't just give you the extra room as a problem. Oh wow!
It's also 1 a.m, so there's not much I can do.
Yeah, what do you do?
Those moments, I think, are going to continue to go like this, because that hotel experience is going to continue to go down, and a hotel is a very big investment. The owner of that hotel should be ashamed that that's how they operate it. When they had rooms at 1 a.m, they should have just fixed the situation. And then the Ritz-Carlton stories that we hear all the time are going to continue to go this way. And so I think actually the gray area is going to be eliminated in the customer experience, and you're going to make a decision, good or bad. And the bad are going to be the businesses that don't last long, or in that hotel scenario is going to have to flip hands to have a new owner come in and new blood try to fix that customer experience. AI doesn't fix that. AI doesn't tell human beings how to be good human beings. Like, that's back to parenting and how you're raised. But I think that the gray area is going to be eliminated more and more as time goes on, too.
Well, as we think about wrapping up here, I want you to share a little bit about what you're doing with FranCamp. What is it? Who can attend? You know, what's the ideal person for it? And you know, tell me how you're helping it. So just your opportunity to talk about anything you want to do.
Well, first of all, I hate selling. I like giving, which is part of the premise of what FranCamp started off as. I was like, there's a million conferences. Why would I want to go to another conference? I was like, well, what do I miss at conferences, or what do I love at conferences? Either half full or half empty. And everybody talks about the roundtables as being like monumental moments. It usually is like a speaker that can leave me with a message, and the roundtables, and then all the fluff in between is just wasted time and networking, and then drinking at night and missing all that stuff anyway. And so I was like, all right, well, let's take a mastermind type approach. Let's put franchisors at tables. And the other twist early on was, let's eliminate the title supplier, because I think suppliers get bad reputation for being a supplier. And I said, you are not a supplier. You're an entrepreneur. You're a founder. You're a CEO. Like, forget about being a supplier. You're there to talk about the problems in your business. You're there to solve issues as a peer, not as selling something. And so it's built this really, really solid event that we've built it a little bit of speaking. We've added in panels, but only because our brands have asked for them. But we say there's no power. There's PowerPoints don't exist here. I don't even want microphones. I want it like so intimate. And so it's good. Like, we had about 100 people in New Jersey. We're ambitious to do 4 of them because people wanted quarterly this year. And so we've tried to build it as like a good networking, and also a place where when I decided to start our business, I quit an agency that is one of the biggest ones in franchising. And so I had the franchise mafia after me for a long time. I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to be kicked out of all the in crowds, let me create the non-in crowd, and we can start building this up. And it's worked quite well, but it's not a moneymaker. It makes $0. We try to break even at all of them. We try to do some cool things. We have the guy that played Rookie of the Year and was in American Pie doing their one in Chicago, simply because we're doing brand story. I was like, why not get a Hollywood actor to talk about what it's like to write a script? And so we've done some cool things and called in some favors, and it's really a give back event. But it's meant for anybody. It's meant for suppliers and franchisors and whoever desires to have a community to help. Because I think selling or rewarding franchise is the hardest thing in the world to sell. When you're trying to convince someone to invest their life savings in the business they have little to no control over. Okay, if that's going to be the hardest thing in the world to sell, then we're going to need some support around us to actually set up good infrastructure and develop franchises. So it's been a good run. This is going to be Chicago in September will be our 6th one, and number 7 is Miami in December. So
well, yeah, I'm looking at definitely attending your Miami event. It sounds like a great event, and I know that for me the Mastermind concept. I wrote about it in one of my first books called Superpower. I became an EO member years ago, and when I invested in EO, I was like, tell me about EO, tell me about the forum, and I knew Vern Harnish who helped start EO, so as we were speakers together and spoke on several stages. And what I liked about it was a safe environment to share with like-minded individuals that were critical thinkers, open-minded, and coachable, and they could call you on your crap. And for me, at the time when I first became an EO member, I had a sporting goods company doing about $50 million a year. 140 employees. I was running a big company. I should not have been running the company. I definitely should have been turned that over before I sold it. I should have sold it a lot sooner. While I was still, selling to 4,000 dealers and all the mass merchants and specialty catalogs and Sharp Image and Sky Mall and all that. But I remember having a lot of turnover, and I was in my mastermind and I was complaining, can't find good employees. They're not intrinsically motivated, blah, blah, blah. And I was bitching about it. And, one of my EO members said to me, he said, well, I just have to ask you a question. How many businesses have you had? And I think that was business number 9 at the time. And because I'd started businesses and I'd grow them and sell them because I was good at growing a business, not good at leading a business, right? There's a big difference, right? And so this guy says to me, he says, so you've had some turnover. And I said, yeah, these damn employees, you just can't find good people. And he said to me, well, I just want to ask you a question. What's the one common denominator in all these businesses? Who's always at the scene of the crime? He said, sounds like, yeah, exactly, Nick. And for those of you listening to the podcast right now, he's pointing at me. And he did. He called me out in the mastermind and said, look, you don't have a team building problem. You don't have a communication problem, a change problem. You don't even have a management problem. Or, it's you have a leadership problem. You need to learn how to lead a company and create a culture. And I'd heard the words, culture, leadership, management, team building, communicate. I'd heard all those terms, but I actually went to town and my mastermind buddies shared their insights of how they grew good companies, because my biggest problem, Nick, is I was delegating without details. Like I would hire people, and because I was a critical thinker, I just thought everybody could solve problems. So I would hire people, I'd look at their resume, I'd pay them a lot of money, and I'd be like, okay, here's $100,000. You can do this. Great. Here's your job. But I was setting them up for failure because I wasn't giving them the support, the communication, the guidance, the training that they needed. Now, this was decades ago, everybody. I've certainly gotten better since then. But that all came from a mastermind that shifted my life. Same thing with personal relationships. My mastermind said, hey, you need to do this, this, and this. This is the problem, because you can't see when you're creating a codependent relationship. You need those outside. So like FranCamp, one of the real advantages is you're bringing those people together in a safe environment where they can share confidential information in a way that actually helps them get new perspectives. It's not solving their problem. It's not giving them the answer, but it's giving them an environment to which they can get the answer.
Yeah, that's right. And, I think, first of all, I'm sure even before you got those next level leadership skills, you were still doing your best.
Yeah,
and I
thought I was. Yeah.
So, well, sometimes the empathy needs to go in both directions. I think sometimes teams have to be empathetic to those that are trying to figure it out too, and, that's the benefit of being with peers is sometimes it takes someone else's viewpoint, which is why you go having issues in a relationship, you having issues with friendship, you go talk to your peers to get perspective. In business, it's every conference you're like, how are things going? Oh, business is on fire. Right, if you really look behind the scenes, they're like, holy shit, how am I going to get through this?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting ready to the National Speakers Associations this weekend, and there's going to be 3,000 keynote speakers at NSA, and I've been in NSA for decades. I was a national board director. I founded the $1 Million Speakers Group, speakers making seven figures, and the only reason I brought that up is the conversations. The reason we started that group was to change the conversation, because it's a lot different at a different level of the business, as opposed to someone who comes in and says, what's a keynote? What's a breakout? How do we work with bureaus? What are agents? How do we find associations? Like, there's a different conversation. And so we had to create a group that would do it. But it's interesting because, you go into that group and you ask, how's it? Oh yeah, I'm booked. And the funny thing is, because I work with a lot of these people, probably 40% of the people in that group have been clients before. We built their brands. I know their marketing. We've worked on their Salesforce or Zoho marketing automation. Like, I know how many leads, I know how many times they're speaking, and I know what their speaking fee is. And I'm like, you're so full of crap, but there's that ego factor. And I think it's ego and imposter syndrome. And one of the things that I've, been pretty good at with my episodes and everything is, this is who I am. Now, obviously I'm speaking faster on a podcast than I would a keynote, but I just believe in being real, right? I mean, the only way you're going to help people is to add value, and you've added so much value. This is an episode that I hope that anybody who's listening, you check them out at 1851franchise.com or 1851francamp.com. Connect with them on LinkedIn. Great guy. Obviously, what you're going to get is you're going to get an unfiltered approach on the real deal, because he works with so many brands. I know that for me, one of the things that made me more successful is because I work with all these brands and they teach me, just like I've learned from you today.
Well, the only criticism that I have to give you is you've clearly lost plenty of weight. So you need to refilm your intro, because you look so much better now than you do in your intro videos. And I say that as a former 305 pounder in high school. I've been there. So go make your intro video look better, because you look so much better now.
Well, I certainly appreciate it. I've worked hard. As a backstory, I used to be a professional cyclist, and I was Olympic caliber speed skater in my 20s, started my sporting goods company, and stopped training. I was working out 40 hours a week, and I went from 165 to 280, just without even really realizing it. Now I'm down to about 240, and I'm going back down, but I'm losing weight again. And, I finally had to realize that I'm responsible. I control the fork. I'm responsible for everything in my life. Part of it is I've also worked with all these, I did 7 events for Anytime Fitness. You talk about being fat shamed, I love Chuck and Dave. They brought me in 7 times to go with all their regional events. And, everybody in that room is, in shape. All the franchisees are in shape, and of course I spoke for Orange Theory, but that was before they bought, Orange Theory and changed from self-esteem brands to purpose brands. But it was interesting because I was saying something from stage. I was like, I made an excuse. I said something like, well, I really want to get back in shape, but, I haven't had time. And one of the franchisees raised their hands, and I said, yes, what can I do for you? He said, hey, I just have a question. What are you doing at 6 a.m.? I said, I'm sleeping. He goes, get up early and go work out. You don't have any, this is in front of everybody. And after that, I was like, you know what? He's right. I can either produce an excuse or produce a result. I have to walk my own talk. I'm telling everybody else, here's the systems, here's how you should get better and follow your stuff. And then I had to take a good hard look in the mirror and go, okay, American Airlines seats aren't getting any bigger. I'm getting older. So I really appreciate that. So I don't mind that. I definitely need to keep doing that. So now it's just get more footage, swap out the footage, and keep swapping out the footage.
I can see you're making progress, and that's why I called it out. I think it's good to hear progress, and I think there's value in that.
All right. Any closing thoughts you have for our listeners today?
No, I'm grateful that you asked to talk with me. I love doing this stuff, and I look forward to building a relationship and continuing to build a relationship.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So thanks everybody for tuning in to Fordify Live, where we're all about accelerating your business growth. Until next time, keep innovating, keep growing, and keep fortifying your success. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you for tuning in to Fordify Live. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the Business Growth Show podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. We air weekly at 11 a.m. Central Time. So until next week, keep pushing the boundaries and never stop growing.